Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by First Paw Coffee Company, specializing in private label premium blend coffee. If you're serious about coffee, you should check it out. First Paw Coffee's passion is high-quality, small-batch roasted coffee. They take the extra time to taste and get everything perfect before they release new blends. They aim to bring you a cup of happiness each time you pour yourself some coffee. Find out more at ak.dog/free and enter for a chance to win some First Paw Coffee prizes, a book from our collection, and tote bag. One winner will be selected at random each month. That's ak.dog/free.
From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Parto.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert Forto and you're listening to the Dog Driver Show, and I am here with my co-host KP. KP, how's it going today?
Excellent. Another sunny day actually in Alaska, and I'm really excited today. We have a very special guest with us.
Yes, his name is Asbjorn Erdal-Aase, and he is calling in from Sweden. He is Norway. He is 68 years old, and he ran his first race in 1964. This gentleman here has been mushing for a long time, KP. I know we're going to jump in to talk a lot more about his history, but what do you know about him?
Asbjorn, actually, years ago, when Erdal-Aase came to United States and Europe and started to dominate the open class and limited class circuit with his dogs, we got really interested in the Eurohound. So what we did actually with our kennel partners, Kennel Chisik and Christian Tavo, is I contacted Asbjorn actually in late 90s, early 2000s, and we established a semi-partnership with this gentleman because of his bloodlines, and we imported a lot of dogs actually from his kennel, different bloodlines, to establish the Eurohound that I'm using currently in my teams many generations after. Asbjorn, how is everything in Lillehammer?
Yeah, it's going close to the winter now. The ice is come on the lake here. No snow.
No snow, huh? I had the opportunity to stay at Asbjorn's farm in Lillehammer. Asbjorn, tell us a little bit about yourself. You are a very well-known dog breeder and racer in this sled dog world. But for some of our listeners who are not familiar with your background, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, now I'm a retired doctor, and when the people ask me what kind of job I had, I always answered I'm a dog musher. And then I said, tried to correct me, aren't you a doctor? No, that's something extra, I told them. So I used to be all kind of doctor. I've been a surgeon, I've been a scientific, and I've been up in the Lapland, up in the very north part of Norway, to the very end of Norway, in the Sami country. And the last 17 years I've been doctor in psychiatry for young people.
Tell us about the sled dog background, the mushing background that you have. I know that you've been in the sled dog milieu for over 40 or maybe 50 years actually. Tell us how all of that started with your Garrett Wright Huskies and the Lillehammer Huskies.
My grandfather, he used to live in Tromsø, that's a city very north in Norway, and he had a real Greenlander dog that was born on a little ship in the ocean, and this dog, a Greenlander with tipped ears, and he was dangerous to people, so my grandfather had to go to the police station every week to show him that he had control over the dog. And he wanted to to introduce me into the dog mushing. So when I was 9 years old, I got a puppy from a Samoyed. So I used Samoyed for mushing in pulka style, that will see toboggan with skis, for many years. And at the most I had 4 Samoyeds. And the ambulance service in the forest around Oslo city, it was done by dog sleds. No snow machine, no helicopter, it's only dogs. And then I changed after a while, because the Samoyeds, they are a bit lazy. I went to the Siberian, and after a while, more and more Harris Dunlop, Zero Siberian, and then Alaskan. And then I analyzed all the best teams in Alaska, what was their dogs. Because many dog mushers, they are very proud, they are so good dog mushers, but I analyzed that's because they had super dogs, and all the super dogs, they were hybrid dogs, they were mixed from different strains. So then I wanted to make my own strain, kind of a own breed, and I analyzed that Garrett Wright, he copied a guy called Johnny Allen, that was a very good musher in the early days in Alaska, and he made a mix of wolf, Irish setter, and Siberian husky and Alaskan husky. So Garrett Wright copied him. So and the wolf killed his dogs, so he had to start once more. And then Garrett Wright, he won the main race in 1950, and he was winning Open North America in 1983 with the lead dog Whitey. So I bought Whitey when she was 9 years old, and I thought I'm going to make a new kind of hybrid vigor dog. So I was looking into the hound. The hound dogs, they are very popular in pulka race in Norway. So the German short hair and the English pointer, and I tried even greyhound, but I ended crossing Garrett Wright, pure Garrett Wright, from this old leader Whitey, and frozen sperms from the best dogs in Alaska. So we in Norway, we got the best Alaskan strain in Europe, even better than in Alaska, because Norwegian mushers, we cooperated, so we got very good dogs, and then I crossed them with the hounds. But the hound is difficult breeding, because many of them are not born leaders. So I was looking for a lead dog, like Martin Buser, the Iditarod champion. He crossed with Mari Herato's German pointer, Falk. That was accident breeding. But then he turned up to get one of the dominating mushers in Iditarod for many years. And then and he did the same mistakes. He was so proud of himself being so good dog musher, and forgot that the dogs were doing a job, and that was the hybrid figure. So I had a friend, he was a tourist musher with Siberians, and suddenly I could read in the papers that he was winning 8O class. And I was shocked. How could this tourist musher win in sprint races? Then I heard that he had 2 yearlings, pure English pointer in lead, and I studied the background, and I knew the father of the dogs. So I took my best daughter of Garrett Wright's Whitey and bred it to this English pointer. And that was the start of the Lillehammer Husky. Lillehammer because the Olympic game was here, and Husky means only the individuals that eat meat. So Lillehammer Husky I produced, and that's very important part of the Norwegian hound and the European hound, Scandinavian. It's got so many names now, but I call them Norwegian hound.
Yeah, for our listeners not familiar with you, when I stayed at Asbjorn's place, he actually has a library of genetics and breedings and sled dog lines from years and years and years ago, and I was fortunate enough to stay there almost a week and read a lot of articles, a lot of them actually in English, so it was easier for us. And when we imported the lines and some of the dogs from him, we selected, like he said, different type of genetics, so we can use those in our program and basically start the melting pot in our environment. Asbjorn, you when I was there and when we met for years, you established what you call the Viking team to come to Alaska and come and compete in different races after the quarantine was removed from Norway. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, because Norway is a rabies-free country, and we were not allowed to bring our dogs outside Norway and come back without having them in a quarantine station for 4 months. That's very expensive. If you take 15 dogs home to Norway and they stay in a quarantine 4 months, you use all your money. But then suddenly it was accepted that we could vaccinate the dogs and take a blood test and tell that they have immunity against rabies. The first time I was allowed to go out from Norway, that was in '94, and then the World Championship was in Topmos in Germany. And that was the first time I got tested my Hound Cross International. And in the World Championship, I think it was 23 different nationalities. So that was a big event in Europe. And Terry Strieper came into the open class. And the first day he started with 26 dogs. I started with 17. And he won. But on the first day, I got secondation on the top of the hill, and the Swedish guy shouted to me, 1 second in front of Terry, and I was shocked. 1 second before the star Terry Strieper. But that was the first sign of the power of the cross dogs. So I ended number 2 in that World Championship, and 3 years later, in '97, I won the World Championship. And then I started with 20 dogs, and Egil, he was second, and on the third day, I had still 16 fresh dogs, and Egil was down to 10. So in a way, he was about psyched out, so I beat him. And then after that, Egil went to Alaska and stayed there for several years, and he was dominating the sport with the Hound Cross. And he had more than 50% of his dogs were coming from my breeding, and of course his main leader Mike, that was breeding in the World Championship in '94, when he used on his paper registered German Shorthair, used the lead dog of Terry Strieper, Hop. And I see that Hop is still living in a way. Terry Strieper used his frozen sperms, or got his son of Hop at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, this week, Thursday, we're going to have the interview with Terry Strieper live on the podcast, and he actually talks about that puppy and how important that little puppy is to him because of Hop, how important that dog was to him. Asbjorn, you also came to Alaska with us. We had, if you recall, in early 2000, we all together we established a small partnership, and you came to Alaska and you raced, and your son Sigurd came, and Thomas Werner and Birgitta Naas, they were among us with the Cheeziks and Tavos. How was the Alaskan experience for you when you came here and when you saw our dogs and you compare them to the one that you had in Scandinavia?
Yeah, I started in Open North American in 98, the year after I got the World Championship title. But I did, and I talked to George Atlas several times, and he said, "You're doing a mistake. You have to race some small races before the main race, Open North American." And I was afraid to get some dogs hurted. I had only 22 dogs over to Alaska with the airplane, and so the speed was so much higher in Alaska. And even when it was during the race, it was very warm and sunny. I think it was Celsius plus 15, and that should be a benefit for me. But the speed was so high, so yeah. My team was a bit shocked, and I was not good enough prepared for that. And afterwards, after that, I thought I went to Alaska more like an experience, a kind of a holiday, present to myself. But Egil, he was much more serious, and he stayed there and won all the next year's main races, and with the Norwegian or the Scandinavian hounds. So we changed the sport, actually, from Norway and Sweden.
So earlier you learned about First Paw Coffee Company, and now I'm going to tell you about its Tail Wagger Blend. First Paw Coffee Company's Tail Wagger Blend is their first offering, and its name and label were crowdsourced from their Facebook fans. How cool is that? The Tail Wagger Blend is a private label premium blend that was developed just for them. It is a medium roast from Colombian beans with tastes of Brazil nuts, grapefruit, and oak. Be sure to go to ak.dog/free and enter to win a bunch of cool prizes. That's ak.dog/free.
I know that in my team, actually, from years and years ago, probably 20 years ago, I had some puppies out of your Yapfoot, your Red Viking dog that you sent to Alaska, who did quite a bit of breedings. Actually, there are several of top teams, they have this line in their background. Tell me a little bit about that special dog, Yapfoot.
He was the best leader I had. That was a second breeding with this same English pointer, Harry, and I used him all 3 days in the World Championship in 97 and all 3 days in Open North American in 98. And later I let it be in Alaska. So it stayed with Mari Herrator for 3 years, I think. And she used him in Open North American. And when I was following my son was to Fairbanks in 2001, he was participating in the Junior World Championship with 8 dogs, and he used Red Viking there. And then Rudy Robert had hurted his main lead dog, and we lived at the same hotel in Fairbanks, and we were European and the time difference, so we wake up 5-6 o'clock in the morning. And we had a lot of talking, and I said, you can lease my main leader, Red Viking, but I wanted to have $3,000 for that deal. And even Roddy Robert, he is a rich guy, he hesitated, but after a while he said, okay, I pay $3,000. So, and he ended up, I think, number 9, and one of the best results for a European ever in Alaska. So then I got money for the traveling myself. So Red Viking, he was a very good, and that was a granddaughter of the grandson of old Whitey. So that's the same key breeding for me. Garrett Wright bred with this English pointer. And I used English pointer before German pointer, because German pointers and greyhounds, they are thinkers. They think too much. I even tried to copy Garrett Wright using an Irish setter, but Irish setter cross, they also are thinkers, and I don't like thinkers. I like young dogs that just are crazy, so I can teach them how to behave. But that's different. So some people like the German thinking dogs because it's easy to train them and drive them more like you drive a car. But I did that too with my point across team up in the mountains here close to Lillehammer. So I used a four-wheeler, so we went to the mountains, so the dogs knew that no, we are going on a long, slow trip. So we went many kilometers, and I asked them after 500 meters, I said, no, you are calm down, easy, start to trot. I was studying at Harry Stanlop's kennel. That was back in 82, 83. I stayed there for 3 weeks, and Harry Stanlop was one of the first persons in sled dog world that started with the training wheel, and he also used the command to trot. So on training, 3 trail dog teams every day, and he teach them to trot on command. And he did that in the main race in Alaska too, for On the Wool and Open North American. And when he came to the checkpoints with the cameras and TV cameras on, he just said to the dogs, no, increase the speed up to loping. And on the radio, everything, they told that he was driving so fast. But when after the checkpoint and out of the camera position, he said, go down to trot. So then he won the race. So it's easy to teach them.
If I could jump in here just for a second, I have a question for you. If we could backtrack just a little bit. And my question is it's going to be based on a lot of the listeners to our show are not in dog sports at all. They're just enthusiasts or fans. Can you talk a little bit about the thought that goes into breeding some of these different lines of dogs? I know that, as a dog musher, I'm familiar with it, but how do you go through the process of picking who do you think is going to be the best, and then of course potentially have the future with your line?
I'm out of the sport, so I just follow all others, and I have a son. He is a Norwegian champion, the youngest ever, when he was 18. And last winter, he got a silver medal in Norwegian championship. So I have relatives that are coming behind me, but usually I know I'm more following, and I knew all about from Jeff Cohn's pedigree magazines, and I knew all the dogs in Alaska, and even brother to my first point across, my leader was called Killer, and the brother was sold to Sweden, and the Swedish musher sold it to Rick Svensson, and even he used him in Iditarod and came into Nome in single lead. That was in 99, I think. And Rick Svensson was had a very good result that year with a half English pointer in lead. And I said, how could you use that dog with very little fur? It was very strict, got a new rule in Iditarod. You have to have Nordic dogs. And then Rick Svensson answered, it's a Nordic dog. I bought it from Sweden, and it's bred in Norway. So it's a Nordic dog. But I know this winter, Thomas Warner, one of my best friends in dog mushing, we cooperated for several years. He's now left the sprint race and is now into the long distance. So he won last year the best, the most important long distance race in Europe, Femernløp and Finnmarksløp. And now this winter he's going to the Iditarod. So that will, and I know that his strain of dogs, they are going back to his sprint dogs that will see, say, my Norwegian hound cross, and he bred fur onto the dogs, and fur is the most easy thing to change in dog breeding: fur and size. So, but the leader attitude is the most difficult breeding aspect.
Right. You know, KP, what's really interesting in talking to all these folks is how everybody's intertwined. You know, a lot of the guests that we've had on this show already, you hear their names back and forth, and it's really interesting to hear not only their names, but of course the distance mushers. So it really is a close community, isn't it?
It is definitely a close community. As Asbjorn was talking, I just heard his son's name, Sigurd, who came to Alaska when we were running the World Championship. And if I'm not mistaken, Taina Terrace's team is going to be driven by Sigurd. Is that correct?
No, the sound was very down. It was difficult to hear. Yeah.
Is this right that Sigurd, your son, will be driving Taina Terrace's team at the championship this year?
No, he's very eager. Yeah, he was driving in Norwegian Championship half a year ago. Then he was asked from this Taina Therese. She's Finnish and Swedish, and she's breeding the same kind of dog. And she's a handicapped woman. She's sitting on the sled. So and she had a very good team. So he asked on the internet who want to lease a team, and Sigurd said, "I will." And with his routine, he was able to handle a 10-dog team, and he was second in the race. And he is very eager to go into the long distance, but he lives in Oslo city, and it's if you live like I do up in the mountains, you can have long distance capacity training. Like Thomas Warner is living at the same level as I do, so you have to find the correct place to stay. And now everything is about long distance races.
Yeah, this mushing community, like you said, Robert, we are very intertwined. It's like a gigantic family, and a lot of dogs and a lot of people, they know each other, especially people with a lot of history and background, like like Asbjorn, like strippers, like a lot of people that we talk to, and that's huge, because as a family we support each other, we help each other, and we try to improve the not only the sled dog, but also the sport in general.
Right. So Asbjorn, I have one final question for you. We asked the same question to all of our guests, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, since you have such a history in the sport, and that is, what would you give for advice if one person were to be coming up into the sport brand new and they ask you for one piece of advice? What would you give them?
Buy an old dog from the best team in the type of race you want. If you go to long distance, you go to the long distance musher and ask for the 6, 7, 8 years old lead dogs and breed it. And then you are breeding this old lead dog with another lead dog, and then at the same time think about the hybrid vigor, because now people have forgotten that. That was the start of the Norwegian Hound. That was a hybrid vigor. So you have to find something that's not the same strain as you start with. You have to make a cross. That's even in human and in cows and pigs and breeding, everything. That's hybrid breeding. That's very important. It's 3 to 4% better quality in every aspect. So I see on video and pictures that the Norwegian hounds, you can recognize the size and the look and the coat and everything on videos and pictures, but I think now they are bred from so many sides, so it's more or less been into a kind of I call it brown sausage. It's not the hybrid vigor is got away. So that's important to think hybrid vigor, and I think the big difference now is coming in long distance races like Iditarod. So it's interesting to see how good Thomas Warner will do it, because he got the sprint, open class sprint in the background of his dogs, and now he got several dogs with coats. So but still, you have to think hybrid vigor and leader attitude. Nothing is more difficult, and nothing is more difficult to breed is the leader attitude. Born leader.
Excellent. KP, I know we're just about out of time. Anything else in closing?
No, I really enjoyed chatting with you, Asbjorn. He has so much background and so much experience, not only with breeding but also with the racing in Scandinavia. And I would like to, talk to him longer, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of time. Wanted to thank you again, Asbjorn, for spending the last few moments with us, and hope to see you in Alaska soon, and have a wonderful winter.
Yeah, I will come and see, but I think, of course, I follow every main race in Alaska by internet, so. But Charlie Champagne and Roxy Wright, they understood, and even there, Thomas Warner was a handler for 1 year. They understood that the open class sprint is going back, so now it's only long distance even in Alaska. So you have to, and I can't. I will not have the time, or don't like to stay on a sled training 5-6 hours a day and then in for a cup of coffee and then out another 5 hours trip. Sprint race is much faster and much more funny, but I see that the long distance race is coming up very, very fast. And in Norway we had the same, and we all mushers came from the same family, so the best long distance mushers in Norway now I was racing against back in the 70s, 80s. So, yeah. Excellent. So the sport is developing.
It is definitely it's growing and moving very quickly. Thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to following up with you in the future. On behalf of my co-host today, KP, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company. Learn more at firstpaw.coffee.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.